is so vast, it's so large, that actually when it comes to measuring the performance of the economy, it's very difficult to pinpoint something because of the vastness. So to help the government actually assess the performance of the macroeconomy, the government have specific objectives, they have specific indicators which they focus on. And they can be categorized by 4 kind of key things and a few other smaller things on the side as well. So, the way I like to look at macroeconomic objectives is to remember this acronym, TIGERS. It's never going to steer you wrong as TIGERS. So learn TIGERS really well, and when you understand what TIGERS is, you'll get to what these macroeconomic objectives are. So let's work through TIGERS. First of all, in T, the governments always look at trade performance. Trade is fundamental. And what's the objective? The objective is for balanced trade. Balanced trade. Not having much of a deficit, or not having a huge deficit, and not having a huge surplus either. Balance between imports and exports, between revenue leaving the country and revenue entering the country. Balanced trade performance. I, you have inflation. The governments very much target inflation. Specifically, what is the objective here? Low and stable. A certain level of inflation is deemed acceptable. So low inflation is deemed acceptable, but as long as it's stable, not high, not rampant, not accelerating. Low and stable inflation. G is a fundamental one. A fundamental objective of government is growth, targeting real GDP. And what's the objective here? To have strong growth, but also sustained. Try and negate the effects of the business cycle. Strong, sustained growth. E is for employment. A very important macroeconomic indicator. The objective here, very simply, is just low unemployment. As low as possible. As close to full employment as possible. These are the 4 key macro objectives. Regardless of the government in the world, they will target these 4 indicators and they'll look for these specific objectives. But there might be some other governments around the world that also have other objectives too. So there can be a whole host of other, maybe smaller objectives. And certainly these 2 are probably the biggest of the smallest others. So R, to redistribute income. So redistribution of income. To look for income equality, as fair as society desires. And finally, S is for stability in the economy. Economic stability can also be a macroeconomic objective. You can have a whole host of others as well. But these, I guess, are the key ones. The top 4 especially, all governments target. And these 4 things really are at the heart of all of macroeconomic analysis. Anything you do in macro comes back to pretty much the assessment on these 4 macro indicators. So learn TIGERS very well. It's never going to steer you wrong. It's always going to do good for you. See you next time. Thank you.
Unlimited data for social media with Voxy Mobile is great for beating the winter blues.
Yeah, I'm watching baby orangutan vids to learn how to laugh again.
You'll get there, hon.
The fun never ends with unlimited data for social media on Voxy Mobile. Selected social apps in UK. TNCs apply.
Hi everyone. We have understood the macroeconomic objectives of government, but now to actually understand how they can be targeted, we need to find out how they're measured. So, let's take growth, perhaps the most fundamental macro objective of all governments. And let's understand how we can gain a measure of growth. Before we look at that though, we need to understand what the economy is. How can we decide whether an economy is growing if we don't actually know what the economy is in the first place? So the circular flow of income helps us get an understanding of the economy. It models the economy for us. And from this model, we can gain 3 different types of measurement of growth. So let's start off by looking at households and firms, 2 economic agents that exist in the economy. Households provide their services to firms in the form of labour, in the form of entrepreneurship, and as a result they gain rewards, they gain incomes out of it. The incomes then go to households receive this, and they spend that income on goods and services produced by firms. Right, well that's one measure of the circular flow, money flowing around the economy. It originates from firms when actually workers are hired and those workers spend that money. Okay, really, really simple, two sector, two agents. In truth, the economy is much more complex than that. We've got the government we need to include. The government spends money as well. The government taxes people. We also need to consider the rest of the world. We trade, don't we? Money enters our country by exports, and also money leaves the country by imports. There are lots of different ways in which money can enter that we've not looked at here, and there are lots of different ways that money can leave the economy that we've not looked at. So we need to open up this model now and consider four sectors. Bring in the government, bring in the global economy. So, yes, there is consumer expenditure. Yes, okay, households, consumers, basic people, you and I, we receive incomes, we spend that income. But there are other types of spending as well in the economy. Governments spend money. Okay, there is government spending, known as G. These letters are very important, so learn the letters as well. There's spending by firms in the economy, which is known as investment. Capital I. And there is also spending by foreigners when they purchase our goods and services, known as exports. So when we sell our goods abroad, money comes in, and that's export revenue. So yes, you've got all these three different types of expenditure as well, and all these three things will lead to more money coming into the economy, money entering the circular flow. They are called injections. So on top of consumer spending or other types of spending where money is injected into the circular flow. So make sure you know those. But at the same time, we've assumed in this basic model that all of our income is spent. Well, definitely not. Some of it actually leaves the circular flow. Some of it we don't spend. Some of it we save, don't we? So savings, known as S. Some of it is taxed. There is the government, and the government taxes a lot. Taxation, T, some of it leaves via taxation, and some of it is spent on goods abroad. And that's known as spending on imports, when we buy goods from abroad. And all of these three things, either money is leaving the country, leaving the circular flow, or it's just not being spent, in which case it exits the circular flow. So these things are all known as leakages from the circular flow, where money can leave the economy, leave this flow of income and spending. So you need to know, we've got injections, these are very important to understand, the leakages here, which are also on top of expenditure, consumer expenditure in the economy. So consumer expenditure is not an injection, it's an actual part of the flow, whereas these three things are external, which is why they're injections. What you need to know here is, well, how can we kind of get an idea of growth? Well, if injections, so G plus I plus X, are more than leakages, S plus T plus M, there will be economic growth in the economy. Whereas if leakages were more than injections, there will be a fall in growth in the economy. Right? That's known as short-term growth. The actual size of this flow can also increase if there are more households. If the quality of the labour increased. So basically, if the quantity and quality of our factors of production increase, then the size of this flow can increase as well. And that will be long-term growth, which we're going to get into later on. But very basically, this is the circular flow. Injections and leakages. When injections are more than leakages, we see growth. Make sure you learn this very well. See you next time. Thank you.
I'm Linda, proud mum of Team GB's Emily Campbell. I know from watching my daughter through the years, the slog of training can get ugly. That's why Quaker is the perfect sponsor for Team GB. Because even though their porridge looks flipping ugly, it's the ugly stuff, the real stuff, that fuels us. Quaker, deliciously real, deliciously ugly, sponsor of Team GB.
Right. For this video, I'm assuming you've understood the circular flow perfectly. If you haven't, watch my previous video on the circular flow. Right, let's move from the circular flow to now measurements of growth. The circular flow is brilliant because yes, it gives us a measure of the economy, a model of the economy, but it also gives us three ways in which we can measure economic growth. So what I've done, I've redrawn the circular flow, but I've just added a couple of things onto it. So yes, we still got income, we still got expenditure, But now I've just added on the first stage, where households provide factors of production, basically labour, to